William Shakespeare. You know the name, right? It's basically synonymous with literature itself. But behind all those iconic plays, there's this incredible story of ambition, of mystery, and a genius that honestly came from the most unlikely of places. So we're going to peel back the layers and try to figure out who was the man behind the words.
And look, this isn't just us saying this 400 years later. This was written way back in 1623 by Ben Jonson, who was a huge playwright himself and one of Shakespeare's biggest rivals. Even then, the people who knew him best understood that his work was something else entirely, something that was going to last forever. I mean, that just perfectly sets the stage for a legacy that's still growing today. And that's the big question, isn't it? It's a real historical puzzle. This guy didn't come from a noble family, he wasn't university educated like all his rivals were, and yet, he completely blew them all out of the water. So how in the world did he do it? Well, let's follow the trail. Okay, so our story kicks off not in the hustle and bustle of London, but way out in the quiet market town of Stratford-upon-Avon, pretty far from the center of the universe, theatrically speaking. This is it. This is where it all began. Back in April of 1564. His dad, John, was a pretty successful glover, even became a local official. And his mom, Mary Arden, she came from a family of landowners, so, they weren't poor by any means, but he was definitely not born into the literary elite, not even close. So before he was the bard, he was just a young guy starting a family. He got a really solid education, heavy on the Latin, at the local grammar school. Then at just 18, he marries an older woman, Anne Hathaway, and boom, they quickly have 3 kids. But this picture wasn't all perfect. There was real tragedy here. His only son, Hamlet, died when he was just 11 years old. You just can't overstate what a blow that must have been, and a lot of people see the echoes of that grief in his later plays, like King Lear or, of course, Hamlet.
And then he just vanishes. Seriously. After his twins are born in 1585, the paper trail goes cold for about 7 years. We call them the lost years. What was he doing? Was he a school teacher somewhere? Did he get in trouble for poaching deer and have to skip town? The theories are all over the place. All we know for sure is that when he pops back up in London in 1592, he's already making a name for himself in the theater.
All right, so now we head to London. This is where that ambitious kid from the countryside is going to transform himself into a literary giant and a very smart businessman.
And let's be clear, he was not welcomed with open arms. The established playwrights, the ones who all went to Cambridge or Oxford, they looked down on him. They saw him as a total outsider. This quote here, calling him an upstart crow, is from a nasty pamphlet by a guy named Robert Greene. He's basically trashing this actor who has the nerve to think he can write as well as them. It's the best backhanded compliment ever, right? They wouldn't be attacking him if he wasn't actually good.
And here's the thing that really sets Shakespeare apart. He wasn't just a writer. He was a complete man of the theater. He was an actor, a playwright, and, this is the crucial part, a shareholder in his own acting company. They even built and ran their own theater, the legendary Globe. This wasn't just about art. This was a business, a serious one, and it's what made him a very, very wealthy guy. You can really see the incredible arc of his genius here. He starts out in the early 90s, kind of learning his craft with histories and comedies. By the middle of the decade, he's dropping masterpieces like A Midsummer Night's Dream and Romeo and Juliet. And then, in the early 1600s, he just unleashes this storm of legendary tragedies, giving us the absolute titans of literature: Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Then, he finishes his career with these more thoughtful, magical plays like The Tempest. Just an unbelievable run.
But, writing great plays is one thing. How on earth did they survive all this time? And how did his influence get so big that we're all still here talking about him?
Honestly, we owe everything to 2 of his friends. See, back then, plays weren't considered serious literature. The scripts were just work documents for the actors. But 7 years after Shakespeare died, 2 of his acting buddies gathered up everything they could find and published it in one giant book, the First Folio. And thank goodness they did. Without this one book, half of his plays, including Macbeth, would have been lost. Just poof, gone forever.
And his impact goes way beyond the plays themselves. It's literally baked into the words we use every single day. Phrases like with bated breath or a foregone conclusion. We use them all the time without even thinking that they came from Shakespeare. The man invented thousands of words and phrases. He didn't just use the English language. In a lot of ways, he was building it.
And the sheer scale of his reach is just It's mind-blowing. Guinness World Records puts the number of his works sold at over 4 billion. 4 billion with a B. No other playwright is even in the same universe. He is, flat out, the best-selling playwright the world has ever known. So in the end, he came full circle. He retired from the hectic life in London, moved back to Stratford as a rich and respected gentleman, and died there in 1616. He was 52. He was buried right in his hometown church. But as we've seen, his death was really just the beginning of his journey into becoming a global legend.
And that brings us to the great paradox of Shakespeare, which is what makes him so endlessly fascinating. We know his work so intimately, but the man himself, he's still, in so many ways, a ghost. This is really the heart of the mystery. On the one hand, we have the hard facts. We know about his family, his career, his property deals. But then, on the other hand, you have all these huge, tantalizing questions that have kept people guessing for centuries. What happened in those lost years? What did he really believe religiously? What was his sexuality? And of course, there are those theories, mostly dismissed by scholars, but still out there, that he didn't even write the plays. It's all these gaps in the official record that just keep the debate raging. So, in the end, maybe we'll never know the man completely. He might always be a bit of an enigma. But his words are everywhere. They explore every possible corner of what it means to be human, and they do it with a power that hasn't faded one bit. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. As our world keeps changing, what new arguments will we have about his plays, and what new secrets will we find in his words? Another 400 years from now?